Mike and I had a fabulous conversation once at Foo Camp where we debated whether Yahoo
It started on a blog.
Right, should be trying to compete with Google on search, or whether they should be figuring out what assets they owned rather than trying to be a Me Too player. And I still think that is a critical dimension. So who's got really cool stuff that that they ought to be playing to rather than trying to be a second tier someone else? Any thoughts?
Are we still talking about search?
We could talk about search. We could talk about payment. We could talk about location.
The search discussion was fascinating because your premise, if I'll paraphrase, was that no one can ever beat Google. So no one should ever engage in any search research or creative search product.
No, that's a little, that's a little strong.
And so that Microsoft should just stop because they can't possibly win, and they should focus on something that they can win on. I think you said open source stuff or something like that. And I just, that was where I disagreed with the argument. Right?
Yeah.
Is that not a correct
No, I don't think it's fair. I do think, I think we both agree that competition is good for people.
But for the community in particular.
Yeah. What I do think, though, is that first of all, there is a class of player. Take PayPal. They've got a really good payment. When I think about this as an internet operating system, you say, okay, there's a payment subsystem. So if you're a payment player, be really good at it. And then you look at something like identity. Is another subsystem. Facebook is making great hay at dominating that with things like Facebook Connect starting to be used as a platform by many, many developers for authenticating and identifying people. Now, Microsoft, made a play with Passport many years ago, failed mainly because they were Microsoft and people didn't want to play with them. But I still think, I look at Microsoft's assets in identity, with sort of Exchange. I don't know how many, identities are there in the email, not just Hotmail, but literally all those Exchange accounts. Isn't there some kind of identity store there? How does that play out? Because a collaboration has,
But what about search? I mean, I don't disagree with any of that. But can't they be really good at search too?
Oh, absolutely, and it's quite clear they are. I mean, Bing is really making great progress, and I have to applaud, Microsoft's, conviction and dedication at going after important markets. But here's the thing that I guess I would say. If you go head-on at a very strong opponent, this kind of goes back to the Book of Five Rings, you're going to lose, right? You have to attack where they're weak, attack where you're strong and they're weak. And I don't know that enough players are thinking big enough about where all this is going and saying, okay, where are the non-head-to-head matchups where we can outflank these people? So you look at what's happened, for example, with the iPhone. Great example of Apple just outflanking everybody, kind of going somewhere with this sort of rich, sensor-driven phone that had all kinds of cool features. And then from there, I think Apple backed into the App Store market, but once they had it, they've ridden it for all it's worth. And so they became the market leader, and not in a new category, not by kind of saying, oh, yeah, we got to get into search and search advertising too. They went somewhere else. And I guess maybe that's kind of where I'm thinking. Well,
when it comes to attacking, by the way, the new me is to let you finish your thought completely before I, because with you, it's always like I've found that like the best way to bait you is to let you get about halfway through your point when you haven't made the point yet, and then just jump in and attack whatever you've said so far. And you're passionate, so you get a little bit flustered, and then when you're flustered, they like go on and pounce on you again. So I wanted you to say everything that you wanted to say. I don't. The book, The Five Rings. I have no idea what that is. What is that?
Oh, Musashi. He's a famous samurai. So anyway, it's a long.
I actually didn't know.
Okay, actually, maybe Sun Tzu is actually what I was thinking of. It wasn't actually Musashi.
I'll say that from a reporter standpoint, it sure is exciting seeing Microsoft hit Google head on in their core search business, and seeing Google hit Microsoft head on in their core Office and operating system business, which generates all their revenue. I mean, think about it 20 years from now, when we look back at this period, I think it's going to be fascinating to see these two giants battling each other while everyone else sort of in the space tries to remain relevant.
Well, except it's not really a two-way game anymore. I think, there's also...
But between the two of them it is.
Oh, yeah, sure. But
between those two players, it's a two-way game.
Yeah. Although we're really seeing... I think what's really interesting is it's a multi-way game You look at, for example, do you have any insight into these rumors of discussions between Microsoft and Apple about, for example, Bing becoming the...
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I originally started that rumor. By the way, the pictures of, we have to talk about location at some point too, right?
Yeah,
but you remember the pictures of Eric Schmidt and Steve Jobs in Palo Alto?
Yeah.
First of all, I was mad because I'm like, why did somebody take that picture and not send it to me? They sent it to Gizmodo, which is in, I don't even know where they're based, in New York, I guess. But that's more personal. But I was like, why are those two meeting so publicly?
Yeah.
And I had all these conspiracy theories popping in my head because those two can't go sit anywhere in the world, particularly in Palo Alto, and not expect people to wonder why they're meeting. And I'm like, is there something there?
Was that intentional?
Is it Jobs, to making sure to Microsoft that he still knows Google and likes them? Or anyway, none of the conspiracy theories seem to work. But
and it was also funny because Gizmodo had this sort of detailed analysis of body posture, and I go, I've had conversations with Eric where he's hunched over. And that's how Eric is when he's thinking intensely. And they have this whole interpretation that he's scared of Steve Jobs. I was like, give me a break.
Yeah, I don't think he's scared of Steve Jobs, but I think it'd be fascinating if they did. But when you talk about all the other players, Microsoft and Google are battling each other to the death. Maybe not to the death, but over profits. Then you have the rise of Facebook and maybe the rise of Twitter. And what Facebook might become, could be so much bigger than what, Google's done with advertising on search and what Microsoft has done with Office. And Windows. So I think they're both a little scared of them.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And I think they're all, they've all got Apple envy. I mean, you look at the kind of, if you look at, there's three companies that have giant cash machines, and that's Microsoft, Google, and Apple. All of them are just minting money. Facebook,
I think Facebook's
Amazon are really important players, but they haven't yet figured out, how to just turn the crank. This is, I think, is one of the things that distinguishes those three players is they have enough resource that they can invest far into the future. Now, the question, will they invest intelligently? Because, of course, Microsoft had that for years and spent a lot of money investing in, ever more refined and foolish, UI refinements like Microsoft Bob, instead of this, they didn't even see the internet future coming. And I think in a similar way, there's certainly the mobile future, I think, caught everybody a little bit by surprise, even though it shouldn't have. But, you look at Google's strategic work in Android. Anyway, I just look at, to me, those are the big three. And the question for me, for Facebook, for Amazon, for PayPal, for nuance and speech recognition, for any of the other, the location-based players has got to be, am I going to make an alliance with one of those guys, or is there an alliance between the rest of us? You look at all the assets that Yahoo has, and what's their strategy? What's the strategy of a News Corp? And how do these guys? There's this great quote that I love from Benjamin Franklin. I think I originally heard from Dave Farber, which is, gentlemen, we must all hang together, or we will assuredly all hang separately. And it's a great quote because you think, oh my God, we forget those guys in the American Revolution. That was really what they faced. If they didn't win, they were going to hang.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of great companies here, billion-dollar companies. And if they don't win, they're going to hang. And I don't see the sense of urgency in some of these companies.
Like Yahoo? I just think Yahoo's out of the race now, right? So.
Well, yes and no. They're out of the race if you define it, as they let themselves be defined so long as the race is about search advertising. So Yahoo was dominant in all kinds of other areas, and they let themselves be characterized as number two in the area where they were weakest. And I think that there is a real opportunity, I think, for Yahoo to sort of figure out how to play with a lot of other people and make their assets relevant in other people's businesses.
Yeah.
So
a couple things. Again, wanted you to get it all out so I could just attack it piece by piece later. But Facebook worries the hell out of me right now.
Okay.
We've got, and I think this sort of segues into the where discussion, but we all discovered recently that Facebook, we believe, is going to start giving your data to third-party websites when you visit them, just based on your Facebook cookie, and not having you sort of signing in on Facebook when you're there. So I might go visit a blog of one of my friends, and suddenly all this data will flow into them directly from
So
Facebook.
have you signed up for this service, Mike, so you're getting all this benefit at TechCrunch?
Yeah, we have.
You're going to complain about it with other people.
We definitely want the data flow, but that's what's so fascinating is that we're all sort of voluntarily walking into this potential disaster, right?
Yeah.
Where our data is one, we can't voluntarily get it out of Facebook yet. I think that's starting to come in a way we want it, but our data is basically sent all over the place, based on who knows what kind of rules and things like that.
Yeah.
So I'm really worried about that. I actually have defended Facebook on privacy a lot. Until recently, I've really started to get worried about, their monetization goals might start to conflict with their desire to protect users.
Yeah, I guess I've always had a kind of faith in the market that if companies go too far astray, their users will desert them.
Are there examples of that? I mean, recent examples you can think of? Because the network effect counters that to some extent.
Yeah, I think that's true. But maybe part of it is I take a long-term perspective. It's funny because, of course, you look at Microsoft's 20-year reign, all the stuff with open source. But the web did come along. The web did change the game.
Yeah.
And then, just as you look, it looks like everybody's getting really scared of Google, and they're having, you're starting to see the kind of government action against Google. And all of a sudden, there's real competition in the market again. Apple and the smartphone has changed.
I have a big story on Google coming up later today, by the way.
Oh, great. Is it an April Fool's story or a real story?
No. We're nothing like that. It's, but it's a really, really, really huge story we're breaking in about maybe 20 minutes after I get back from this. So
awesome. So if anybody wants to leak, also has access to this and wants to break their embargo, you can beat TechCrunch.
It might be the story of the year. It's going to be that.
Okay.
Anyway, sorry, back to you. Enough about me.
But, I think you make a really... Actually, why don't you just break the story here on stage? That would be really awesome.
I'll tell you what, I will break part of it here on stage, but we're page-view model. We got to get the,
Yeah.
Although I guess if everyone promised they'd visit TechCrunch anyway, but I don't know if I can come into that.
Well, go watch TechCrunch for this story.
Definitely Google's going to announce a pretty big effort in alternative energy. And actually, they're not going to. I'm going to announce it. If I'm now, I really have to get back right after this and do it. But they're going to. I think there's some big news coming there. So
excellent,
huge news.
That's one of the things I love about Google. I have to say they're not afraid to go after big important problems, big important markets. It's not clear where the money is, and that's where I think they are a real visionary company.
It's not that many companies that will stare down China.
Yeah.
And treat them as an equal. So.
By the way, I wish.
I didn't mean that as a political statement. By the way.
But I wish more companies would back Google and join them in doing that, as opposed to just kind of saying, "Wow, this is our chance to gain an advantage."
Okay, but can we wait till Google has one policy on China for say 6 months before Congress starts to trash everyone who does business with China? I mean, that was absurd last week when. This senator and the congressman sort of said, Microsoft, why are you doing business with China when Google still does business with China? They just shed the parts they didn't want to do anymore.
Yeah.
Did you hear about this whole download of the whole source code thing?
No.
That's another story.
Anyway, all right. Well, so kind of coming back to your fear of Facebook. So does Facebook need to adopt a more stringent "don't be evil" policy?
You're probably referring to my post about making fun of Twitter for saying they want to be a force for good. I don't know. I mean, Facebook has never said that. They've never said, we're good. They've never said that. And I honestly, I mean, that's okay. Their actions, are what matter. And although their actions aren't always suggesting that they're going to be good. I think that we need to all be wary of Facebook as users and demand that they treat us, legitimately. You remember when Robert Scoble, I don't know if Robert's here, but you remember when Robert Scoble, did he work with Plaxo or somebody? He was like, he took all of his Facebook data and exported it, I think, into Plaxo? And it was called Scoblegate, and he was banned from Facebook for a short period of time. You remember all this happened?
Yeah, and I just saw, we had Facebook just ban someone else.
So, now Facebook is giving, I think this is known, it's known now, but they have a deal with Yahoo where all of your data, users have to opt in by, OAuthing into Yahoo, but they can export all that data into Yahoo. And so there's a really permanent two-way data relationship.
Here's really the
It's exactly what they banned Robert for.
No, I understand, but here's the question.
But why is it okay now, but it wasn't okay then? Well, there's business reasons now.
Yeah, I think so. But there's also, I think, a vision, in Facebook's defense of creating user value. I've actually been thinking, there's a motto we use at O'Reilly that I like to think is better than "don't be evil," and it is create more value than you capture.
Yeah, you're sort of famous for saying that.
Because if you can actually look at that calculus and say, wow, there are trade-offs here, because there's very few things where you can say, wow, that is absolutely, we shouldn't do that. And when it's true, you don't want to do it. But there are a lot of other cases where there are trade-offs. And if you can actually quantify and say, wow, there are benefits to users in this. A great example of that when Facebook introduced the news feed. Again, huge privacy uproar. But before long, we said, no, this is really great. Yeah. It did create more value for users.
Clearly.
And it created value for Facebook in the process. And I feel like as long as companies remember that, and so the real test of whatever Facebook does on this front is it going to be more useful to users, or is it just about more advantage to Facebook? And if you can look at that and you go, they get advantage, but they give advantage, and that's greater, then we're better off.
I agree. But location has... Is that the total time left, or is that
that's the total time. So we should take some questions from the
I
audience.
agree, but we didn't say a word about location, which is actually kind of awesome.
Okay. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Do the questions.
But if people want to come up to the mics, we can take a couple of questions. But let me just sort of say, what is the state of location? I mean, the one thing that I would say is there are, you looked at what Blaze showed this morning. We know what Google has done with...
What did Blaze show this morning?
Blaze
I was here, of course, but what did they just...
He was just sort of talking about some of the different ways that Bing Maps is sort of creating a layer of imagery. He used the image of trellises and grapes, and how Microsoft is building the trellis for user-generated data to be incorporated.
Sounds like they put a Farmville layer over Bing Maps.
It's not a bad idea, actually. Actually, maybe they should figure out a Mafia Wars equivalent to help with the problems in Mexico, as a Bing Maps layer. I'm trying to see if anybody's coming up to the mics.
It's just white out there.
Yeah, it's very hard to see. But I just want to say this on location. There is a lot at stake. There's a lot of features here that look like they're in the phone, but they're really the sensors in the phone when you do that sort of data lookup and you say, okay, where's my location? What you really got to remember, you're doing a lookup against some kind of cloud database. And the more data assets that people have in the cloud, the more power they're going to have over the location landscape.
Hi. You guys hear me? So since we've been talking about Facebook so much, what do you guys think is going to happen in 3 weeks around the places and the location announcement that Facebook is planning?
The question is, what do we think is going to be announced? Or what do we think of...
what do you think is going to be announced, and what do you think, how's it going to be received? Is it going to just... Are people going to use it, or do you think it will just kind of be a beacon?
Well, so the one big scary issue, which is more of a red herring, I think, than it appears to be, is around security. I think Facebook and previously MySpace have always been concerned with the security of its users because the attorney generals of the various states use problems that happen on MySpace and then Facebook as ways to get elected governor. And so there's constantly being attacked by the AGs. And so the location stuff presents a whole new slew of possibilities of problems, and we've seen. This is something I prepared to talk about, but we didn't.
Oh, go for it.
No, it's just you've seen in Asia in particular some real problems happen with location-based services, and it's usually a boyfriend or a husband either forcing his girlfriend or wife to be tracked or to track them to see what they're up to, and it just can cause them a real mess. And
so again, there will be a need for some real policy, both on the part of companies
but
and
no
also
matter
government.
what the policies are,
yeah.
And if you have an option to share location, people can track that. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering if Facebook is going to really rely on third parties for the location.
I don't know.
part.
I mean, I have no insight into what Facebook is going to offer, but just
But you see, it's a problem, right?
from the I totally agree with you. There
Fox
are
News will jump all over the first thing that first time somebody dies because they've been tracked on Facebook.
Yeah, I understand, but I also feel like that's also we'll get over those things.
Right, that's why I said I thought it was
Yeah.
a bit of a red herring.
Yeah.
So yeah.
The thing that concerns me is about the sort of Facebook announcement is my guess is it's a response to Foursquare. And the question then is, okay, so every time a new startup comes up with a good idea, do the big guys immediately say, oh yeah, we're going to do that too? And is that something we just sort of say, yeah, that's the way it works?
That's the way it's always worked.
Yeah.
Yeah. But as we saw with YouTube, for example,
Yeah.
sometimes setting up Google Video isn't enough to win, and you have to go and.
Yeah.
And I think Twitter has gotten to a point where it's going to be very hard to simply duplicate it. / impossible. And I think Foursquare might be getting into that position.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I should disclose I'm an investor, so I hope
You
I hope
definitely,
so.
yeah.
But
What round did you invest in? This is through OATV?
Yeah.
What was the valuation? This
Yeah,
last round?
I'm not
The
going to
big
tell
round?
you that.
It was an earlier round.
No, the earlier one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the earlier one.
You should have
Not
sold
the
in this round, because, right?
Why would we sell?
Because the valuation's outrageous. I mean, there's I'm just saying I would have sold like half and then
Why?
hedged.
Hey, come on, we're an investor. We're in there for the long term. I mean, come on. We're going to make this thing go all the way. So
No,
you do that once in later stages once something's sort of exited, but not when you're. Oh, anyway, we've got another question over here.
Next question.
Okay.
Hi, Mike and Tim. JD here. We're here in San Jose. TechCrunch has sort of eaten the San Jose Mercury News' lunch over the years in terms of technology coverage. But isn't there an opportunity for local news publications online to use location-based services in a way, that sort of takes advantage of their local advantage of covering their local communities? What is the knitting of local news publications, and can they win in that local space, or is it going to be an outsider, some startup that comes in and does it for them?
I'll tell you, this has nothing to do with what you just asked, but
Okay.
my parents retired on a small island off the coast of Washington, and every time I go up there to visit, it's like the small town atmosphere. It's like beautiful. Snow on the ground in the winter, the whole thing. And I think, screw TechCrunch, screw everyone. I'm going to go live here now. And every winter when I go there, I think that. And of course, I come right back. But what would I do if I was here? Well, what I would do is I would set up a blog for the city, and I would let people write and have them come on and then have a forum and then have local advertising and just do all this cool stuff and have a lot of it be self-generated. Because a lot of the people in the town write editorials for the local newspaper and they're really into it, and small towns seem to be perfect for that. That honestly, I honestly bet I could make $50,000 a year doing that once I got it sort of up and running and live a nice life doing that. And I'm surprised more of that hasn't happened. And then once you have the platform, theoretically, you could franchise it out and do things like that. So, there's a few startups that are starting to look at this. I don't know what location has to do with that, but it's a dream that I have that someday I will be fighting the trolls in Anacortes, Washington, as opposed to on the entire internet.
I know we're running out of time, but I just want to say one thing.
Over time.
Yeah, we are over time.
Let's just take out who's next.
I actually use TechCrunch a lot as an example whenever somebody says, oh my God, the death of media, because I remember this conversation I had with Michael Leeds, who was the CEO of CMP Media, which was a company that ran computer trade publications, back in the 90s. And this was when the web was first coming on. And he says, if we can't get a publication to $50 million in the first 3 years, we shut it down. That was his level that he had to get it to for it to be a moneymaker.
Yeah.
And, I look at you're nowhere near $50 million.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And yet you are successful, you're profitable, so
we're doing 50 million. No,
yeah, right.
Every quarter. But you're right.
So the level at which you can deliver,
there's no cost.
and yet TechCrunch is doing a better job than the CMP rags ever did, with timely daily coverage. So the possibility of new media to deliver a better service, much cheaper, is what is going to emerge out of this rubble. All these high-cost publications, yes, they're going to fail. But if people need local news, they are going to get it. Somebody is going to give it to them, and somebody's going to come up with the model. We just have to wait for the dust to clear.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That was passionate. That last is like, you're going to, you should start a company around that. Honestly, you should. This sounds like a problem maybe you guys should solve.
All right. Listen,
Are we done?
I think you should solve it. I think
Let's
we're done.
do another 20 minutes and talk about location.
No, we really got to go.
Thanks very much.
Hey, thanks a lot, Michael.